Welcome everyone to the Elixir Kitchen. Thanks for joining us today for another exciting cooking and nutrition class. We have a great class for you today, so thank you. My name is Jeremy Capone. I am the wellness chef here, and as always, I am joined by
Stephanie Gladman. I'm the registered dietitian with the Elixir Kitchen program, and we have an exciting program for you in today's class.
Yes, absolutely. And Steph, what are we talking about today?
So today we're talking about those who have a liver transplant. So very often individuals come in who are malnourished, and there's lots of research to show that their prognosis after transplant is not favorable. So it's really important to be well nourished before surgery, and just as important to be well nourished after in terms of the recovery mode. So some of the hot topics that we are going to talk about are lots of protein, getting enough calories, eating small meals throughout the day, and hydration. So we'll talk about all those things as we go through the different recipes in today's class.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, and today actually we partnered with the Center for Living Organ Donation at UHN, and actually record a little message talking a little bit more about what he sees with liver cancer patients.
My name is Gonzalo Sapisochin. I'm one of the transplant surgeons and liver surgeons here at UHN, and it's great to be able to be with you guys today. My main practice is on, as I mentioned, on liver transplantation, and I deal with, malignancies of the liver, mainly liver cancer, what's called hepatocellular carcinoma. And this is a cancer that arises, on the cells of the liver, mainly on these cells called hepatocytes. And it's a pretty aggressive cancer. It actually represents the sixth most common cancer worldwide, and it's actually, the number of patients we see with liver cancer is increasing. It's increasing worldwide, but certainly it's increasing here in Canada and in Toronto. When a patient is diagnosed of liver cancer, there's treatments that are potentially curative that we can obviously offer and cure patients, and there's treatments that are offered to increase life and actually don't cure but can extend life. In terms of treatments that are curative, when tumors are single and very small, we can sometimes burn them, something called ablation. And in that case, the patients can do very well. If not, the other option is to operate and resect these tumors, take them out. And this is only for patients that their liver function, their liver is preserved. And the other treatment when the liver is not preserved and the tumors are confined to the liver would be to do a liver transplant that basically treats both the cancer and the underlying cirrhosis, which is the main risk factor to develop new tumors, and actually the soil where those tumors grow. In general, if we're able to remove the tumor or to do a liver transplant, the chances of the patients being alive 5-10 years after the surgeries around 70 to 80%. However, there's a big difference between transplant and resection because, as I mentioned, when we take a tumor out, we're leaving behind the main risk factor on this soil where these tumors grow, which is the liver, the inflammation of the liver. And when we do surgery, the chances of the tumor coming back are around 70%. And when we do transplant, actually, the chance of the tumor coming back, given that we're changing the liver and there's a new liver, is around 15%. So there's no doubt that transplant is the best treatment option for this patient. However, transplant is not for everyone. Transplant is a very big operation, and we need to make sure the patients are healthy enough to undergo this treatment. But if patients are candidate for transplant, and mainly, as I mentioned, are patients that usually are under the age of 70, or if they're older, they have to be very healthy, and the tumors are confined to the liver, then we can offer these patients a liver transplant. Living donation really poses an advantage in these patients because that wait time kind of diminishes. Obviously, living donation doesn't happen the day after we see a patient, but definitely the time we need to work up these patients is shorter. And we've actually demonstrated with our own data that if you have a living donor, the chances of a patient with liver cancer, again, confined to the liver, is better than if they go into a waiting list. So we really, tell all our patients that living donation is a very good option in this setting. Obviously, when we do surgery for patients with liver cancer, it's very important that patients get to surgery very healthy. And the diet, and nutrition plays a very important role. A surgery is a very aggressive thing for the body. So it's very important to be, very, very well hydrated, weeks before the surgery, having very good and healthy food with a lot of vegetables, fruit. Usually protein is very important for this condition, and obviously for the recovery after surgery, even if it's resection or if it's a transplant, the diet has to be very healthy to make sure that patient recovers very well. And it's pretty similar, but it's what we know as good and nutrients and macronutrients. And these are basically grains and vegetables, fruits, and obviously keep very hydrated. So anyway, this is what I wanted to share today with you, and I'll be happy to see you in the future. Thank you.
All right. So for our first recipe, we figured we would be seasonal and have a recipe that was more as the weather turns to be cooler, something that is more comforting. So we decided to make a soup. And again, as I mentioned, before transplant surgery or after, some of the key nutrition elements that we want to focus on are being well hydrated and getting enough protein. And this soup is super hearty, and I'll let Jer take it over and show us what it's all about.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Steph. And again, thank you again to Dr. Sapasochin for sharing that with us. This will be posted on our YouTube channel later, so you can always check it out afterwards. Yeah, right off to the first recipe. This is definitely much more of that comfort food type of recipe. And we're going to be making a turkey kale and shiitake mushroom soup. So focusing on a lot of umami there, a lot of flavor with the shiitake. But in terms of the protein, we're going to be using some turkey. Now, I know Canada, we're coming right off of Thanksgiving, so you might have some leftover turkey. Maybe you have some leftover turkey bones or stock that you've made, which is perfect. You can go ahead and use that. I'm going to show you how to make just a really, really simple, quick turkey stock. And then, again, if you don't have the time to do that, you can just use a low sodium chicken broth or chicken stock for this, okay? So the first thing that we're going to do is you can take some bone-in chicken breast or bone-in chicken thighs, whatever you can find in the grocery store. Preferably if it has the bone in, that's going to give you a lot more flavor in your stock. And we're going to add that to our pot with some carrots, maybe some onions, some garlic. Keep it simple. And then for this particular stock, we're going to be adding some dried mushrooms, okay? So some dry shiitake mushrooms in here, which is going to give it a ton of umami, a lot of savory flavor, okay? And with these ingredients, we're going to cover it with cold water and then just let it simmer for about 3 hours, okay? And that's what I've done here in advance, and I'll try to bring you down a little closer so you can see what's going on right here. So this has been simmering for a little over 3 hours now, but we have this super delicious, super flavorful, rich turkey stock, okay? And we're going to use this as the base of our soup. You can definitely make a massive batch and then go ahead and freeze that afterwards. But it is going to be extra tasty. Again, extra step, you can go for like a low sodium stock as well. Okay, so that's set up, ready to go. Now we're going to get into the soup. And for the soup, we're going to be using, like I mentioned, some shiitake mushrooms, which are super flavorful, bring a lot of richness, a lot of depth, a lot of umami, which we always love to say in our kitchen. And to prep them, it's pretty easy. What we're going to do is take the cap like this, clean them off really well, give them a nice little brushing, a nice little wash. And the stem on the shiitake, unlike some of your other mushrooms, tends to be really fibrous, very woody. So that we're going to actually want to remove. Okay, you can clean them up and actually use them in your stock for sure. It's going to give a lot of flavor, but they're just really way too chewy to actually add into the soup itself. Okay, so we're going to remove that. And then for the small caps, you can leave them whole. Anything that's bigger like this, we'll just give like a very, very rough slice, nothing too thin. Go. So now we're going to jump over to that pan cam. Okay. Oh, actually, hold on. One more thing. Garlic. Garlic, we're going to want to slice here. So you can roughly chop it. I'm going to just thinly slice it. And I'm adding 2 big cloves. The garlic is obviously going to add a ton of flavor here. All right, beautiful. So that's going to go in first into our pot, medium heat with a little bit of oil. You can use olive oil, you can use grapeseed oil, canola oil. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and add that into our pot here. We're going to start off with the garlic. Okay, and again, medium heat. Start to sizzle. If you have some onion, you can go ahead and throw some of that in too. I have a little bit here. So I'll add a little bit of onion.
Yeah. And I think that what really is important here is making things very flavorful. So you might find that you don't have an appetite to eat. So that's why suggesting to have small little meals throughout the day is super important, because it allows for your appetite to kind of get stimulated, and it's not overwhelming to have so much food all at once. So flavor is really, really key here. Now, on the other side, if that onion smell or the garlic doesn't agree with your tummy or makes you feel like nauseous, then totally avoid it. It is a little bit of an experiment. Everybody's different.
Okay, so I added the mushrooms to the pot as well. And I'm going to add just a small pinch of salt here. Okay. And then we're going to give that a little stir. Just like this. Again, nothing fancy. We're not doing anything super challenging here. We just want to start to warm up some of that garlic with the onion, get the shiitake going. It should be, the hardest part here is the broth, okay? And if you've made it from scratch, that's going to take the most time. Otherwise, this shouldn't take too much time at all. And because we've made our broth from scratch, anything that you're adding into, so if we use the whole chicken breast or if we use some chicken thigh, what you want to do is remove it after and then just shred up the meat, and that's what we're going to actually add back into the stock. Again, if you have some leftover turkey or some leftover chicken, roasted chicken from the night before, make it easy for yourself, okay? You don't have to go ahead and cook it all over again. Just use some of that leftover chicken, shred it up, and put it into the pot. Now, when we're talking about food safety, for poultry, for any leftovers, really, doesn't matter what it is really, really important that you reheat your leftovers to the point where they're steaming inside, okay? I know oftentimes, you eat right out of the fridge. I've been caught, eating cold pizza. Who doesn't love the all cold pizza? But it is really, really important for food safety that you do reheat those leftovers. So especially when we're using something like a meat product, like leftover cooked chicken, leftover cooked turkey, we're going to be adding it back into the soup. It's going to be simmering in the broth, and it's going to bring it back up to temp so that it's food safe. Okay, really, really important. So I'm going to go ahead and add that to the soup now.
Yeah, and then just on that note, food safety is really important. Okay, so there's multiple things you want to make sure that your poultry is cooked appropriately. I sometimes get questions asking if it's okay to have sushi or raw fish, and the reason being is you want to play it safe, okay? Because when certain foods are in different temperatures, there's the ability for bacteria to grow. And when you are going through treatment or have had a big surgery, your immune system is compromised. Okay, so we often really want people to be careful in order so that they could heal appropriately. So, cooking any type of meat to adequate temperatures. Using a thermometer is really important. For any of those vegetables or even fruit, you just want to make sure that you wash it appropriately. Hot water is fine. If there's something that has like a thicker skin with the ability for dirt to stick to it, you might want to use a brush for that.
Perfect. Okay, so we have our garlic in, we have some onion, we have our shiitake mushrooms, we have the leftover shredded turkey. Now for the kale part, this is what you want to add closer to the end, okay? Now kale is pretty hardy, it's pretty hardy leafy green, so it can withstand a little bit more time with heat without it getting like too soft and sort of getting mushy and breaking apart. So any kale will work. I didn't have kale, and I found this cabbage. So cabbage is also, kale's part of the cabbage family. Cabbage will also work in this recipe. So this is a purple Napa cabbage. It was just too like vibrant and pretty in the grocery store for me not to pick. So we're gonna add this instead. But again, any leafy greens will work here. And for this, I'm just gonna go big, rough chunks, okay? So you have nice big pieces of that cabbage floating around. Okay, and we're gonna add this to our pot.
Nice, really colorful. And just on that note about the protein that you're using. So in this case, we're using poultry, but any type of protein is really important. Especially after treatment and in that recover or during treatment and during and after the recovery phase. So getting enough protein can help you build a healthy immune system, right? As long as that poultry is cooked appropriately, help fight infection and recover more quickly. Okay, so there's tons of sources of protein. So some of the animal-based ones are things like turkey, fish, eggs, any type of dairy, so yogurt, cheese, milk. But you could also certainly find it in non-animal products like plant-based proteins like nuts and seeds, pulses, and so on. So it's really up to you. But I always encourage people with every meal, like every time they eat a snack or a meal, to make sure that there is protein, really making sure that you're making every bite count.
Perfect. So that's pretty much it. We just covered it. And you can see here, we just covered it with our stock, our turkey stock from scratch. And that is pretty much it. You can let it simmer on low heat for a little bit longer if you like. These mushrooms will take up quite a bit of heat. Mushrooms will actually cook to a certain point, and it's really not going to break down much further than that. So you can let this simmer for another 20 minutes if you like. But as soon as it's brought up to a small boil, you can remove it from the heat. You know that the turkey is reheated enough, and you are ready to season and serve. So can you see that? Is it really bright? Can you see that stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Really nice color from the purple cabbage too. So right there. See, it's brought up to a boil. So now I can reduce the heat to like a low simmer, or even return it or take it off the heat, and it's ready to serve. So there we have it. Our first recipe.
Yum. It looks delicious. And the other thing I wanted to add here is, it's really important to stay well hydrated. Okay, so and reason being, your body is made up of at least 70% of water, right? So your blood has all this water in it, and it's carrying tons of nutrients all to the cells, to the muscles, right? So that you could have energy, that you could be well nourished. So you really want to make sure that you are hydrating appropriately. Now, a lot of times we think like, oh, water is a good source, which it is. I'm not discounting that. However, there are other sources of fluid. So a soup, right? That's made primarily of water. So fluid. So that counts as well. You could have smoothies, milks, any type of milk alternative, juice, right? If you want to flavor your water, you can do that as well. So really important to kind of make sure that you're getting enough throughout the day. And, I know that Jared didn't necessarily add too much fat, like olive oil to this mix, which is fine. But again, if you notice that you're not someone who's eating too much and you want to make sure that you're getting enough calories, you might want to add a couple of tablespoons or teaspoons of olive oil just to bump up that protein in your dish, or even a powder. That's something to consider as well.